At the height of Targaryen power, when dragons still streaked the skies of Westeros with fire and shadow, a gentle king ascended the Iron Throne. Viserys Targaryen did not wield his sword with fury, nor conquer lands with blood. He loved his family, loved his kingdom, loved peace. And it was precisely this love-blind, desperate, indecisive, that ignited the flame of the greatest catastrophe his dynasty would ever know. This is the story of how a kind king destroyed everything he loved most. Viserys Targaryen was born beneath a sky without destiny. He was the second son, the quiet shadow behind his older brother, Daemon. In a dynasty where the firstborn carries the crown and the second carries only hollow expectations, Viserys grew up without the weight of royalty upon his shoulders. No one trained him to rule. No one expected him to ever sit the Iron Throne. Fate, however, has its own designs. When old King Jaehaerys I drew his final breath, he left behind a prosperous realm and a poisoned question: who should inherit? His son and grandson had already departed this world. Only indirect descendants remained, each with their own claim carved in blood and tradition. The year was 101 AC. The lords of Westeros gathered at Harrenhal for what would be remembered as the Great Council, a massive assembly of power and ambition, where the future of the Seven Kingdoms would be decided not by the sword, but by the vote. Two names dominated the discussions. Viserys, grandson of Jaehaerys through the male line, carried the weight of tradition. Son of the king's son, his claim followed the path Westeros had always walked, from father to son, from man to man, like fire passing from torch to torch through the generations. But there was another, Rhaenys Targaryen, the queen who never was, daughter of Jaehaerys' firstborn son. She was of purer blood, closer to the direct line. If pure justice were to prevail, if birthright spoke louder than custom, the crown should rest upon her head. The lords debated, they argued. They conspired in dark corners and proclaimed truths in illuminated halls. And then they voted. 20 votes for Rhaenys, thousands for Viserys. It wasn't even a contest. Tradition crushed right, custom buried justice, and Westeros declared loud and clear: a woman could not inherit the Iron Throne while a male Targaryen lived. Viserys ascended, gentle, kind, unprepared. He had not sought the crown, but it settled upon his head like a sentence. And Rhaenys, she swallowed the bitterness and bent the knee. But the poison of that decision would remain, throbbing silently through the years, a wound that would never fully close. But the story was only beginning. Viserys married Aemma Arryn, a woman of great beauty and noble lineage. He loved her truly, deeply. It wasn't the kind of love that bards sing about, full of burning passion and romantic madness. It was something quieter, more constant. The love of a gentle man for a woman who understood him. Together, they dreamed of children, of heirs who would ensure the succession, who would silence any doubt, who would unite the realm under a single unquestionable bloodline. But the gods are cruel to those who dream too much. Aemma became pregnant and lost the child. She became pregnant again. Another loss. The years passed in a cruel cycle of hope and mourning, of empty cradles and unanswered prayers. Each pregnancy that failed tore a piece from Viserys' soul. Each child that didn't breathe was another shadow haunting the corridors of his heart. But they kept trying, because a king needs an heir, because a dynasty cannot die. And then, finally, a daughter was born, Rhaenyra, with silver hair and violet eyes, perfect in every way. Viserys held her in his arms and felt something awaken within him, love so fierce, so consuming, that he would do anything, sacrifice anything, to protect her. But Westeros needed a son, a prince, a male heir who would continue the line without questions. Aemma became pregnant once more. Viserys prayed. He begged the old gods and the new. He made promises he could never keep, all for a son. And when labor began, when Aemma screamed in agony for days, when the maesters came to him with dark faces and even darker voices, Viserys faced the choice that would break any man. We can save the child, they told him. But the queen... He looked at Aemma, his wife, his love, the mother of his daughter. He looked at the womb where his long-awaited sonnet had to be waited, and he made the choice that would haunt him for the rest of his days. Save the child, the maesters cut. Aemma screamed one last time, not from physical pain, but from the horrible understanding of what was happening. Her own husband had condemned her, for an heir for a boy he didn't yet even know. She bled upon sheets that were no longer white. Her eyes, glazed with agony and betrayal, found Viserys one final time, and then they went dark. From the depths of her destroyed body, the maesters pulled out a boy, small, perfect, with hair of the silver shade that marked his royal lineage. By Elon, Viserys named him, in honor of his father. The prince survived a single day. Viserys held his son's cold body in one arm and gazed at his wife's corpse on a nearby table. Two bloodiest lives, both lost because of his decision. He had killed his wife for a son who didn't live long enough to see the second sunrise. Guilt devoured him. Night after night, he saw Aemma's face, heard her screams, felt the weight of his betrayal like lead in his chest. There was no forgiveness for what he had done. There was no peace. Only Rhaenyra remained, his daughter, the only good thing left from his marriage, the only light in a world that suddenly seemed so dark. Viserys looked at her only 10 years old, bright and fearless, and made a decision that would change everything. If Westeros had denied the crown to Rhaenys for being a woman, he would give it to Rhaenyra in spite of it. It was an act of love, of redemption, of silent defiance against the traditions that had shaped his own ascension. But it was also the first step on the road that would lead his house to ruin. Viserys summoned the lords of Westeros. In the great hall of the Iron Throne, surrounded by the twisted blades that formed the seat of power, he made his proclamation. Rhaenyra Targaryen will be my heir. She will sit the Iron Throne upon my death. Those who serve her serve me. Those who deny her deny me. The silence that followed was heavy. Questioning, some lords exchanged glances, remembering Rhaenys, the Great Council, the decision that had been made only years before. But Viserys gave them no choice. Swear. Swear fealty to Rhaenyra as my heir and the future queen of the Seven Kingdoms. One by one they approached. They bent the knee. They placed their hand over their heart. And they swore, lord after lord, house after house. From the frozen lands of the north to the scorching sands of dawn, the great of Westeros bowed before a 10-year-old girl and promised that she would be their queen. Viserys watched with satisfaction. He believed, genuinely, that he had secured his daughter's future. That the oaths spoken that day would be honored when the time came. Poor fool. Oaths are easy to make when the king is alive, watching with attentive eyes. But when he's gone, when he's cold in his tomb and power is there, shining and tempting, oaths are just words, and words burn as easily as parchment. But in that moment, Viserys didn't see the shadows forming. He saw only his daughter, crowned by the sunlight streaming through the high windows, looking everything a queen should be. The king smiled, and didn't realize he had just planted the first seed of the war that would consume his dynasty. The months that followed were of heavy silence. Viserys ruled, but it was as if part of him had died with Aemma. He moved through the corridors of the Red Keep like a ghost in his own home, surrounded by memories that cut like glass. Rhaenyra was his only joy. He would watch her flying on Syrax, her golden dragon, and for a moment he could forget. He could feel something other than the guilt that gnawed at his bones. But a king cannot live only on memories and remorse. The whispers began, first discreet, then more insistent. Viserys needed to marry again. He needed more children, spare heirs, a queen at his side. The court conspired. The lords maneuvered. Each had a daughter, a sister, a niece who would be perfect for the widowed king. And at the center of it all, like a spider weaving its web with invisible threads, stood Otto Hightower, the hand of the king, Viserys' closest counselor, a man whose ambition was as great as his patience was long. Otto had a daughter, Alicent, beautiful, educated, gentle, and, crucially, Rhaenyra's best friend. The two girls had grown up together in the corridors of the Red Keep. Rhaenyra, the princess crowned heir. Alicent, the hand's daughter, confidants. Sisters in everything except blood. Otto began pushing his daughter into Viserys' path. Subtly, of course. Nothing too obvious. Just casual conversations. Alicent, reading to the grieving king, comforting him in his pain, offering understanding ears and gentle words. Viserys, drowning in guilt and loneliness, began to see in her not a girl, but a safe harbor. Someone who understood him, someone who didn't judge him for what he had done. He didn't realize he was being manipulated. that each casual encounter had been carefully orchestrated, that the compassion Alicent offered had her father's finger behind it, or perhaps he did realize and simply didn't care, because the loneliness of a king is a void so deep that any light seems like a miracle. The council pressed him to choose a bride. They presented options. Corlys Valerian's daughter, 12-year-old child who would solidify a powerful alliance. Other maidens from noble houses, each bringing their own political advantages. And then Viserys made his announcement. Alicent Hightower, his hand's daughter, his daughter's best friend. The silence that fell over the court was one of absolute shock. Corlys Valerian, who had offered his daughter and seen the proposal rejected, felt the affront like a slap to the face. Otto Hightower, outwardly serious, inwardly triumphant. The lords, calculating what this meant for the balance of power. And Rhaenyra felt the world crumble beneath her feet. Her best friend, her confidant, the person she trusted most in the world after her father. Alicent had betrayed her, stolen her father, taken her mother's place, or at least that's how it seemed to the eyes of a 15-year-old girl whose world had already been shattered by her mother's death. The truth, of course, was more complicated. Alicent hadn't actively conspired, she had been a piece in her father's game. Viserys hadn't sought to hurt Rhaenyra, he simply couldn't see beyond his own loneliness. But intentions don't matter when the damage is done. On the wedding day, Rhaenyra wore her house colors, but her face was pale as death. She watched her father take Alicent as his wife. She saw the girl she had called friend become her stepmother, and something inside her broke. The crack was formed, still small, almost invisible, but present, and cracks, when ignored, only grow. The seeds had been planted. Viserys believed he had found peace, found love again, secured his realm. He looked at his new wife and his beloved daughter and dreamed of harmony. He couldn't have been more wrong, because with each passing moon, Alicent's belly would swell, and from her would come sons. Sons with the Targaryen silver hair and the right of blood. And with each son that was born, the question would grow louder in the halls of power, whispered in dark corners and debated in secret councils. If the king has sons, why should a daughter inherit? But there was more, much more. The tragedy was far from over. 9 moons after the wedding, the cries of a newborn echoed through the Red Keep. A boy, healthy, strong, with the silver hair that marked him as true Targaryen blood. Aegon, the second of his name. Viserys held his son and felt joy war with dread in his chest. Another child, another chance, another life that he prayed wouldn't be torn from him as so many others had been. But in the halls beyond the birthing chamber, different calculations were being made. Otto Hightower looked at his grandson and saw destiny. The lords whispered among themselves and saw an heir. The realm looked at a healthy prince and asked the question that had been inevitable from the moment Viserys had married Alicent. Why should the throne pass to Rhaenyra when the king had a son? The law was clear, some argued. Viserys had named Rhaenyra his heir. The lords had sworn oaths. Those oaths bound them, bound the realm, bound the future. But tradition was older than any oath, deeper than any law. For thousands of years, sons had inherited over daughters, brothers over sisters, the male line over the female, always and without exception. And now the question sat in the middle of the court like a serpent coiled and waiting. Viserys refused to acknowledge it. He had made his choice. Rhaenyra was his heir. The birth of his son didn't change that, couldn't change that. He told himself this every night as he held young Aegon, told himself that love could overcome tradition, that his will was strong enough to reshape the world. He was lying to himself. But he wouldn't admit it, not yet. Rhaenyra watched the celebrations for her half-brother with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was 17 now, no longer the child who had been named heir. She understood what Aegon's birth meant, even if her father pretended not to. Her claim, once unassailable, now had a crack running through its foundation, and that crack would only widen. 2 years later, Alicent bore another child, a daughter this time, Helena. Gentle, strange, given to cryptic utterances that no one quite understood. A dreamer, some said. Mad, whispered others. Viserys doted on her, as he did all his children. But a daughter didn't threaten Rhaenyra's position the way a son did. The realm breathed easier. Perhaps Aegon would be the only son. Perhaps the question would remain theoretical, a problem for philosophers to debate rather than warriors to settle. Then came Aemond, another son, another boy with Targaryen features and a prince's birthright. The whispers grew louder. And then Daeron, fourth child, a third son, born with the same silver hair and the same implicit challenge to Rhaenyra's inheritance. 4 children in quick succession, half-siblings to Rhaenyra, but competitors nonetheless. The court began to divide, not openly, not with declarations and banners, but in quiet conversations and knowing glances. In whom they stood beside at feasts, and whose favor they sought in halls of power. Those who supported Rhaenyra's claim began to gather around her. They wore black, the color of House Targaryen, and reminded everyone who would listen that oaths had been sworn, that the king's word was law, that Rhaenyra had been named heir before any of these children were born, and nothing had changed that designation. The blacks, they would come to be called. Those who believed Aegon should inherit as the king's eldest son drifted toward Alicent. They wore green, the color she had chosen for a pivotal feast, a silent declaration of her house's position. They spoke of tradition, of stability, of how Westeros had always passed the crown from father to son. The Greens, to factions, to futures, both crystallizing within the same castle, around the same family, beneath the shadow of the same throne. And Viserys saw none of it. Or rather, he saw it and chose to believe it didn't matter. He loved all his children. Rhaenyra was his firstborn, his heir. Aegon, Helaena, Aemond, Daeron were his blood, his legacy. They could all coexist. They had to. Love would be enough. It had to be enough. He was a fool. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra was no longer the girl who had bent beneath her father's expectations. She was a woman now, with her own will, her own desires, her own schemes. She married Lannister Velaryon, son of Corlys and Rhaenys, the queen who never was. It was a brilliant match politically. The Velaryons were the richest house in the realm, with the largest fleet and their own dragons. Their support would be invaluable when Rhaenyra's time came to claim the throne. But there was a problem. Rhaenyra preferred the company of men. His marriage to Rhaenyra was a political arrangement, not a love match. They performed their duties as husband and wife, shared a table and a castle, presented a united front to the world. But the children that came from Rhaenyra's womb didn't look like Lana, Jacaerys, Lucerys, Joffrey, 3 boys, born one after another. All 3 had brown hair, brown eyes, features that looked nothing like the silver-haired, purple-eyed Velaryon. Features that looked remarkably similar to Ser Harwin Strong, the commander of the City Watch, who spent a suspicious amount of time in Rhaenyra's presence. The realm whispered, the court gossiped. The truth was obvious to anyone with eyes. Rhaenyra's sons were bastards, strong bastards. They were called in cruel jest, boys with no true claim to the name Velaryon, let alone the Iron Throne. It should have been a scandal that destroyed Rhaenyra's position forever. Proof that she was unfit to rule, that she flouted the laws and customs of the realm for her own desires. But Viserys wouldn't hear it. Anyone who questioned the legitimacy of Rhaenyra's children faced his wrath. He declared them true-born Velaryons, and anyone who said otherwise was speaking treason. Vaemond Velaryon, who dared to call the boys bastards in open court, had his head taken for it. His tongue ripped out before he died, a brutal message about what happened to those who spoke such lies. Viserys defended his daughter with a ferocity he had never shown for anything else. Not for the realm, not for tradition, not for justice, only for Rhaenyra. The Greens watched this favoritism and seethed. The Blacks watched it and felt vindicated. And the divide grew deeper, the chasm wider. But the worst was yet to come. The incident that would make the break irreparable happened on the shores of Driftmark, at a funeral that should have been a time of mourning and unity. Lena Velaryon, Lana's sister and wife to Prince Daemon Targaryen, had died attempting to claim a dragon rider's death. The family gathered at Driftmark to burn her body in the tradition of old Valyria, to honor a dragon rider's passing with fire and farewell. The children were there, all of them, Rhaenyra's brown-haired boys, Alicent's silver-haired princes, Daemon's daughters by Lena. Tensions were already high. The adults maintained a veneer of civility, but the children had no such restraint. Young Aemond, second son of Alicent, had no dragon. In a family where power was measured in fire and wings, this was a source of deep shame. His older brother Aegon mocked him for it. Other children whispered. But that night Aemond's chance came. Vhagar, the largest living dragon, had been riderless since Lena's death. Ancient, enormous, a living weapon from the days of the conquest. In the darkness following the funeral, Aemond crept to where the great beast rested, and he claimed her. The boy who had been mocked for being dragonless now rode the most powerful dragon in the world. He should have been celebrated. Instead, he was confronted. Rhaenyra's sons, along with Daemon's daughters, found Aemond in the castle. Words were exchanged, insults hurled. The situation escalated with the speed that only children's quarrels can achieve. "He stole Vhagar," one of them shouted. "You can't steal a dragon," Aemond retorted, with all the arrogance of a prince who had just claimed ultimate power. "Your mother's a..." The insult never finished. Aemond lunged, fists flew. What started as words became violence. 4 against 1. Children fighting with the viciousness of adult hatreds they had absorbed without understanding. Aemond, outnumbered, grabbed a rock, swung it, connected. Then one of Rhaenyra's sons' accounts, differ on which drew a knife. Steel flashed in the torchlight. Aemond screamed. When the guards pulled the children apart, blood painted the stone floor. Aemond clutched his face, red seeping through his fingers. His eye was gone, slashed out, lost forever. The aftermath was chaos. Alicent, seeing her son maimed and bleeding, demanded justice with the fury of a mother's rage. She wanted the eye of the boy who had taken Aemon's, an eye for an eye. The old law, the brutal law, the only fair law in her mind. Rhaenyra stood before her sons like a lioness before cubs. They had defended themselves against Aemon's attack, she argued. They were innocent of malice, only guilty of protecting each other. Viserys stood between them, his wife on one side, screaming for justice, his daughter on the other, demanding protection. He was being torn in two. And everyone in that hall knew it. "What would you have me do?" he finally asked, his voice cracking with exhaustion and despair. Alicent's answer was immediate. "Take his eye. One of the boys who did this must pay the price." Silence fell like a hammer. Viserys looked at his grandsons, looked at Aemond, his face ruined, his future scarred, looked at Alicent, trembling with rage and pain, looked at Rhaenyra, defiant and desperate. He made his choice. "I will have no more of this," he declared. "The matter is finished. You are all my family. I will not have you tear each other apart." It was the worst possible answer he could have given. He had chosen neither side, satisfied no one, resolved nothing. Aemond would carry his scar forever, a reminder that his father valued peace over justice, that the king would sacrifice him rather than punish the true guilty. Alicent felt the sting of betrayal. Her son had been maimed, and the king, her husband, did nothing, demanded nothing. Protected Rhaenyra's bastards over his own trueborn children. Something hardened in her that night. Something that had been softening under years of marriage to a gentle man turned to stone. She would never forget, and she would never forgive. But the true horror of that night wasn't the blood spilled or the eye lost. It was what Aemond said in the aftermath. When asked if the agony was worth it, if claiming Vhagar was worth the price of his eye, the boy smiled through his pain. "It was a fair trade," he said. "I may have lost an eye, but I gained a dragon." There, in that moment, you could see the future written in blood and fire. A boy who valued power over everything, who would sacrifice anything for strength, who had learned that in this family, mercy was weakness and only force mattered. Viserys had tried to teach his children love. Instead, they had learned to hate. And the king, aging and deteriorating, still refused to see the truth staring him in the face. The years crawled forward like wounded animals. Viserys' health began to fail in ways both visible and invisible. His body weakened first. A small cut on his hand, taken from sitting on the Iron Throne, became infected. The maesters treated it, but it didn't heal properly. Then it festered. Spread, they amputated 2 fingers. The corruption continued. More of his hand went than his arm, piece by piece, taken by surgeons, saws in desperate attempts to halt the rot. But the decay wasn't just physical. His mind began to drift, not constantly, not completely, but there were moments when he would speak to Alicent and call her Aemma, when he would look at Aegon and see someone else, when the past and present would blur together in his failing consciousness. He became dependent on milk of the poppy to manage the pain. The drug brought relief, but also confusion, making his lucid moments fewer and further between. The Viserys who had once ruled the realm became a shadow, a ghost haunting his own throne. And still, He clung to his dream of family unity with desperate fingers. He refused to name Aegon his heir, wouldn't even discuss it. Rhaenyra had been chosen, the oath sworn. That was the end of it. But he also wouldn't properly prepare Rhaenyra for the throne, wouldn't give her the experience of governance, the connections with lords, the military knowledge she would need. He kept her close but powerless, loved but not empowered. It was as if some part of him believed that by not choosing, by refusing to acknowledge the conflict, he could prevent it from becoming real. Meanwhile, Otto Hightower worked tirelessly in the background. Every small decision, every appointment, every whisper in the king's failing ear was calculated to position Aegon for succession. Alicent, once gentle and dutiful, had transformed into something harder. She loved her children with fierce protectiveness and saw in Rhaenyra not family but threat. The two women who had once been friends now barely spoke. When they did, every word was laden with double meanings and barely concealed hostility. Rhaenyra, for her part, had grown bold in her father's weakness. She lived openly with Daemon now, her uncle, her mother's brother, a man with his own designs on power. They had married in secret after Lannar's convenient death, shocking the realm and confirming every dark rumor about Rhaenyra's character. Together they had children of their own, true Targaryen children, with the proper silver hair and purple eyes that Rhaenyra's sons by Laena had lacked. The message was clear. These were the real heirs, the legitimate line, but that only made things worse for her brown-haired boys, whose questionable parentage became even more obvious by comparison. The realm watched this all unfold with growing dread. War was coming. Everyone could feel it. The only question was when, and Viserys, dying by inches, refused to see it. There was one final moment, one last desperate attempt at peace. Viserys, knowing he was dying, called for a family dinner, all of them together, one final meal before the end. They came because the king commanded it. Rhaenyra and Daemon, Alicent and her children. The grandchildren, eyeing each other with suspicion and poorly concealed hatred. Viserys had to be carried in, his body so wasted that he couldn't walk. The crown sat crooked on his head, too heavy for his weakened neck, but his eyes, when he looked at his family gathered around that table, held desperate hope. He spoke of unity, of love, of how they were all Targaryens, all blood, all bound by ties stronger than any disagreement. "Let this be the end of it," he pleaded, his voice barely above a whisper. "No more division, no more choosing sides. You are family. Act like it." For a moment, one precious, fragile moment, it seemed like it might work. Rhaenyra and Alicent looked at each other across the table. Something passed between them, a memory of friendship, perhaps, a ghost of what they had once been. Rhaenyra raised her cup. To Queen Alicent she said, her voice steady. "She has been a good mother to the king's children." Alicent, tears in her eyes, returned the gesture. To Princess Rhaenyra, "May she always be strong." They drank. The tension eased, just slightly. Viserys smiled, relief washing over his ruined features. This was what he had wanted, what he had dreamed of. Peace, family, love, conquering all. He was helped back to his chambers, exhausted but content. That night would be his last. And the words he spoke in his final moments would undo everything that dinner had achieved. Alicent came to him as he lay dying. She sat beside his bed, holding what remained of his hand, watching the man she had married waste away. Viserys drifted in and out of consciousness. The milk of the poppy had taken him deep into dreams and memories. He opened his eyes, looked at Alicent, but he didn't see her. In his failing mind, he saw Aemma, his first wife, his true love. The woman whose memory he had never truly left behind. "Aemma," he whispered, "I'm sorry. I should have. Aegon, the prince that was promised. The song of ice and fire. He must unite the realm." Alicent leaned closer, trying to understand the fevered words. "Aegon," she asked. "Our son." Viserys smiled, lost in his visions. "The prince, to unite the realm." The song, the prophecy, passed down from Aegon the Conqueror. Only a Targaryen can stand against the darkness. Aegon must... His voice faded, his breathing slowed, and then stopped. King Viserys Targaryen, first of his name, was dead. Alicent sat in the silence that followed, her mind racing. The king's last words, about Aegon, about him uniting the realm, about destiny and prophecy. She didn't know that Viserys had been talking about Aegon the Conqueror's prophecy, the secret past from king to heir about a coming darkness. She didn't know he had been thinking of Rhaenyra's son, Aegon, dreaming of distant futures. She only knew what she heard, her husband, in his final moments, naming their son Aegon as his heir. The king had changed his mind. That's what she believed. At the end, he had seen the truth, seen that tradition and law demanded a son inherit, not a daughter. Viserys' last act was to correct his mistake, or so Alicent convinced herself. She left the king's chamber with purpose in her stride. The Greens moved swiftly. Before Rhaenyra even knew her father was dead, before the news could spread beyond the Red Keep's walls, the council met. Otto Hightower took control with the efficiency of a man who had planned for this moment for years. "The king is dead," he announced. "Long live King Aegon," second of his name. Some objected. Lord Beesbury, loyal to the oaths sworn to Rhaenyra, stood and protested. He was silenced, violently, his head smashed against the table, his voice forever stilled. The message was clear. There would be no debate, no discussion, no room for dissent. Aegon would be king. They found the prince drunk and reluctant. He had never wanted the crown, never asked for this burden, but his mother's will and his grandfather's ambition swept him forward regardless. In the dragon pit, before the assembled masses of King's Landing, they placed the crown upon his head. The crowd cheered, not because they loved Aegon, but because they had been told to. King Aegon to Targaryen, usurper to some, rightful king to others. The realm had its answer to the question that had haunted it for years, and Rhaenyra, on Dragonstone, received the news like a dagger to the heart. Her father was dead. Her throne had been stolen. Her brothers had committed treason. She collapsed. The shock sent her into early labor. She birthed a daughter stillborn, her body too stressed to carry the child to term. Another death, another loss. And in her grief and rage, Rhaenyra made her own declaration. She would not accept this usurpation, would not bend the knee to Aegon. The lords had sworn to her. The realm was hers by right. She would take back what belonged to her. The blacks rallied, the greens fortified. Both sides called their banners, summoned their dragons, prepared for war. The dance of the dragons had begun, and it was all Viserys' fault. His refusal to choose, his inability to see the truth. His desperate clinging to a fantasy of family harmony while reality burned around him. If he had named Aegon his heir when the boy was born, there would have been no question, no civil war. Rhaenyra would have been disappointed, perhaps betrayed, but the realm would have been secure. If he had properly prepared Rhaenyra for rule, given her real power and the connections to hold the throne when he died, she might have been able to prevent the coup. If he had taken a firm stance at any point after Dreamark, after the rumors of the Strongboys, during any of the countless moments when his intervention could have prevented escalation, the sides might never have formed. But he did none of these things. He loved, and he hoped, and he believed that love and hope would be enough. They weren't. The war that followed was a nightmare beyond imagining. Brother against brother, dragon against dragon. The skies of Westeros burned with fire, and the ground drank deep of Targaryen blood. Aegon would be horrifically burned, his body ruined. Rhaenyra would watch her sons die, one by one. Helena would throw herself from a tower rather than watch her children suffer. Aemond would die locked in combat with his uncle Daemon, both of them plunging into a lake still bound together in mutual destruction. The dragons, the great weapons that had made House Targaryen invincible, killed each other until barely any remained. The dynasty that Viserys had tried so desperately to preserve nearly destroyed itself completely, and the crown he had fought to pass peacefully ended up passed through blood and fire anyway, eventually landing on the head of Aegon III, Rhaenyra's sooner, broken child who would be known as the Dragonbane, the king who watched the last dragons die. Everything Viserys had feared came to pass. Everything he had tried to prevent happened anyway, because he wasn't strong enough, wasn't decisive enough, wasn't willing to make the hard choices that would have hurt in the moment but saved countless lives in the future. He was a good man who became a terrible king, and that distinction matters. The dance of the dragons lasted 2 years, only 2 years, but in those 2 years, A dynasty that had ruled for over a century nearly burned itself to extinction. The numbers are staggering, horrifying, almost impossible to comprehend in their scale of devastation. 23 dragons existed when Viserys died. 23 living weapons, symbols of Targaryen supremacy. Proof that House Targaryen was more than human, touched by something divine and terrible. By the time the dance ended, only 4 remained. For broken, traumatized creatures who would never breed successfully again. The dragons, the very source of Targaryen power, the reason the 7 kingdoms had bent the knee to Aegon the Conqueror, were functionally extinct. Within a generation, they would be gone completely, their mighty roars reduced to legends, whispered by old men. Viserys had presided over the height of dragon power. His reign had been called the Apex, the golden age when dragons filled the skies and House Targaryen seemed eternal. He left behind their graveyard, but the dragons were not the only casualties. The human toll was catastrophic beyond measure. Thousands died in battle, tens of thousands more in the fires that consumed cities and villages when dragonflame fell from the sky. Starvation and disease followed the armies, claiming even more lives. The riverlands became a wasteland. The Reach bled, the crown lands burned, and House Targaryen devoured itself. Aegon too lived long enough to see his sons die, his body ruined by dragonfire, addicted to milk of the poppy, a broken king ruling over broken kingdoms. He would be poisoned by his own men, desperate to end a war that had consumed everything. Rhaenyra met a fate even more cruel. Captured by her brother's forces, she was fed to his dragon Sunfire, while her son Aegon III watched. A queen devoured alive, her screams echoing as her own claim literally went up in flames. Her children, the boys she had protected, so fiercely died one by one. Jaehaerys fell in battle. Lucerys was killed by Aemond and Vhagar in an act of revenge that escalated everything. Joffrey died trying to ride a dragon he couldn't control, falling from the sky over King's Landing. Even her sons by demon weren't spared. Viserys too survived only by chance, captured and sold into slavery before eventually making his way back years later. Helena, the gentle dreamer who had hurt no one, threw herself from a tower rather than watch her children be used as pawns. Her death drove Aegon deeper into madness. Aemond, who had claimed Vhagar and lost an eye, died, locked in combat with Daemon above the God's Eye. Both riders killed each other, their dragons falling dead into the lake, their bodies never recovered. 2 of the most dangerous men in Westeros, destroying each other in mutual hatred. Daeron, the youngest and perhaps most promising of Alicent's children, died in the burning of Tumbleton, consumed by the same fire that had been his family's weapon. Otto Hightower, whose ambition had helped engineer all of this, was executed by Rhaenyra before her own death. His schemes, his plans, his carefully laid strategies all ended with his head on a spike. Even those who survived were broken. Aegon III, who eventually inherited the throne, would be traumatized for life. He had watched his mother eaten by a dragon. He had seen his brothers die. He had lived through hell itself. They called him Aegon the Dragonbane, though he killed no dragons himself. He earned the name by witnessing their extinction, by being the king who presided over their final death. He never smiled, not once in his entire life. That was Viserys' legacy. A child king who had forgotten how to feel joy because of the horrors he had witnessed in a war that never needed to happen. Every single one of these tragedies traces back to Viserys' choices, when he named Rhaenyra his heir in an act of love and guilt, but then remarried and had sons. He created the fundamental conflict that would tear the realm apart. When he refused to either reaffirm Rhaenyra's position clearly or name Aegon instead, he allowed both sides to believe they had legitimate claims. When he looked away from Rhaenyra's obvious bastards rather than deal with the uncomfortable truth, he weakened her claim while appearing to favor her unfairly. When he dismissed Alicent's demand for justice after Driftmark, he alienated his wife and taught Aemond that power mattered more than righteousness. When he grew ill and weak but refused to properly prepare anyone for succession, he created a power vacuum that Otto Hightower gleefully filled. And when he spoke those final confused words about Aegon and prophecy, he gave Alicent the justification she needed to crown her son and tell herself she was following the king's wishes. Every step of the way, Viserys chose the path of least resistance, the path that avoided immediate conflict but guaranteed future catastrophe. He was not evil. That's the tragedy of it. Maegor the cruel was evil. Aerys the mad was evil. Viserys was something far more dangerous. He was weak. He loved his family so much that he couldn't bear to hurt any of them. So he hurt all of them by refusing to make the hard choices that might have saved them. He wanted peace so desperately that he pretended the storm gathering around him didn't exist. So the storm broke with even greater fury when he could no longer deny it. He believed that love and goodness would be enough to overcome tradition, ambition, and human nature. So he taught his children that love was weakness and only power mattered. There's a cruel irony in how thoroughly Viserys failed at the thing he cared about most. He wanted to preserve his family. Instead, he set them against each other in a war that nearly erased them from history. He wanted to protect Rhaenyra. Instead, his choices put her in an impossible position where her claim would be contested and her life would end in horror. He wanted peace. Instead, his reign led directly to the bloodiest civil war Westeros had ever seen. He wanted to be remembered as a good king. Instead, history remembers him as the king whose weakness destroyed a dynasty. Everything he reached for turned to ash in his hands. Every good intention paved another mile of the road to hell. And the worst part, he never understood. Right up until his death, Viserys believed he was doing the right thing. Believed that refusing to choose sides was noble rather than cowardly. Believed that his love would somehow overcome all obstacles. He died thinking he had kept his family together. He died peacefully, unaware that his final words would be twisted into justification for usurpation and war. He never saw the dance of the dragons, never witnessed the horror his indecision had created, never watched his children kill each other or his dragons fall from the sky. Perhaps that was a mercy, or perhaps it was the final proof of his failure, that he escaped the consequences of his choices while everyone he loved paid the price. What can we learn from Viserys Targaryen? That kindness without strength is not a virtue. That avoiding hard choices doesn't make them go away, just makes them worse. That love, genuine and deep though it may be, is not a substitute for leadership. That sometimes the cruelest thing you can do is refuse to hurt anyone. Because by trying to protect everyone, you protect no one. Viserys should have been cruel, should have been harsh, should have made decisions that broke his heart but saved his house. He should have either stood firmly behind Rhaenyra, giving her real power and ruthlessly suppressing any challenge to her claim, or he should have changed his succession when Aegon was born and compensated Rhaenyra in other ways. He should have acknowledged the truth about Rhaenyra's bastards and dealt with the consequences, even if it hurt. He should have taken Aemma's side at Driftmark and demanded justice, even if it meant punishing Rhaenyra's sons. He should have removed Otto Hightower from power the moment the man's schemes became apparent. He should have, but he didn't, he couldn't. Because that would have required being something other than what he was, a gentleman who loved too much and led too little. And so House Targaryen, the greatest dynasty Westeros had ever known, the conquerors of kingdoms and masters of dragons, nearly destroyed itself completely, not because of external enemies, not because of bad luck or cruel fate, but because a kind king couldn't make the hard choices that would have saved everything he loved. Viserys Targaryen wanted to be remembered as a peacekeeper, as the king who united his family and strengthened his house. Instead, he became the king who destroyed his own house not with cruelty or madness, but with weakness and love. And perhaps that's the most terrible tragedy of all, that the best intentions, the purest love, the gentlest heart, all of it meant nothing in the end. Because in the Game of Thrones, you either make the hard choices or you watch everything burn. Viserys refused to choose, and Westeros burned. His family burned, his legacy burned, all because a good man was too kind to be a good king.